Hey there, let's start with a simple truth. You're a person and you want stuff. Maybe it's food, maybe a place to live, or maybe, just maybe, it's a TV that's just a little bit bigger than your cousin's. But here's the thing, there isn't enough of any of it for everyone to have everything they want. And that simple, kind of frustrating fact, that's the starting point for literally everything in economics.
So, let's just ask the most basic question of all. Why can't you have everything you want? I mean, why isn't there infinite pizza? Why don't we all have mansions and private jets? You've probably wondered this, right? Well, the answer is a single, incredibly powerful word that shapes our entire world.
And that word is scarcity. It's just the simple, undeniable fact that our desires are pretty much limitless, but our resources? Yeah, those are not. This mismatch between what we want and what we can actually get, that is the fundamental problem economics was created to solve. Because we can't have everything, we are forced to make choices.
Okay, so let's dive into this. Scarcity forces us to choose, and every single choice we make comes with a kind of hidden cost. Getting your head around this is the first step to thinking like an economist. And believe it or not, it also explains why you should feel pretty good about being, well, the least worst at something.
This hidden cost is called opportunity cost. Think about it. By choosing to watch this explainer right now, you are also choosing not to do a million other things, like watch cat videos, learn to bake sourdough, or finally call your mom back. That next best thing you gave up, that is the true cost of your decision. It's why they say there's no such thing as a free lunch. Even if you don't pay with money, you are always paying with your time.
Now, this idea goes way beyond just you. To deal with scarcity, as a society, we trade. And the reason trade works so well is because of something called comparative advantage. It means that even if you're not the absolute best at anything, you could still be more efficient at one thing than another. So maybe you're a terrible programmer and an even worse graphic designer. But if you're just slightly less terrible at programming, you should do that and trade with someone who is slightly less terrible at design. It's not about being the best, it's about specializing in what you suck at the least.
All right, let's move on and see how this all connects. So we know we have to make choices. To manage those choices on a massive scale, we've developed some incredibly complex systems. These systems are all about coordinating millions and millions of people to get us the stuff we want.
And at the heart of all of it is this beautiful dance called supply and demand. It's actually super simple when you break it down. If the price of pizza drops to $1, you're probably going to buy a lot more of it, right? That's an incentive for buyers. But on the flip side, if the price of pizza suddenly skyrockets, more people will want to open pizzerias to make a profit. That's an incentive for sellers. Prices are really just signals, constantly telling everyone what to make and what to buy.
And when those two forces, what buyers want and what sellers are willing to provide, meet right in the middle, you get the equilibrium price. It's that sweet spot, the market-clearing price, where the amount of stuff being made is exactly the same as the amount of stuff people want to buy. It's not magic, it's just millions of individual decisions creating a kind of spontaneous order.
Now, can you imagine trying to trade your specific job skills directly for a cup of coffee? It would be a complete nightmare. And that is exactly why we invented money. Money is the great facilitator. It's what lets us avoid having to, say, trade a goat for Wi-Fi access. It just makes all these complicated transactions smooth and efficient.
Money really has three big jobs. First, like we said, it's a medium of exchange. Second, it's a unit of account. It gives us a common measuring stick to value everything from a car to a candy bar. And third, it's a store of value. You can hang on to it and spend it later, letting you save up for that slightly bigger TV. Without these three things, our modern economy would just grind to a halt.
Okay, so we've covered the basics of individual choices in markets. But now it's time to zoom out, way out. How do we measure the economic health of an entire nation? How do we know if we're growing or shrinking?
Well, the most common way is with gross domestic product, or GDP. You basically just add up all the spending in a country. C is for consumption, that's you buying coffee. I is for investment, that's businesses buying new equipment. G is for government spending on stuff like roads and defense. And then there's X minus M, which is just net exports, everything we sell to other countries minus everything we buy from them.
Now, while we're talking about these huge national numbers, let's just take a moment to look at this one. That's over 34 times trillion dollars. That is the current U.S. national debt. It's the grand total of all the past government borrowing. So while GDP measures what a country produces in 1 year, this number represents what it owes. Putting those two side by side, well, it really gives you a sense of scale.
So what happens when the economy gets a little out of whack? Well, one common problem is inflation. And here's the simplest way to think about it.
If the amount of money in an economy grows, but the amount of stuff to buy stays the same, prices have to go up. It's like more money is chasing the same amount of goods. Your dollar just doesn't stretch as far as it used to. This is often part of a bigger pattern called the business cycle, with periods of growth, or booms, followed by periods of shrinking, also known as recessions.
So far, we've mostly talked about the economy inside a single country. But of course, we live in a deeply interconnected world. So let's zoom out one more time and look at how all these countries interact to form one giant, and sometimes pretty fragile, global market.
And the logic here is exactly the same as it was for individuals. It's all about comparative advantage. If Brazil is the least worst at growing coffee and Canada is the least worst at producing corn, it just makes sense for them to specialize and then trade with each other. This whole process, globalization, increases overall efficiency, gives us access to a way bigger variety of goods, and generally lowers prices for all of us.
But all that interconnectedness also comes with a big risk. Remember back in 2021 when that one giant container ship, the Ever Given, got stuck in the Suez Canal? Just one boat in one canal, and it brought nearly 12% of all global trade to a dead stop, costing the world economy about $10 billion a day. It was a perfect and kind of terrifying example of just how efficient, but also how incredibly fragile our global supply chains really are.
Okay, we've gone from the individual to the national to the global scale. For this last section, let's zoom all the way back in, not just to you, but right inside the human brain. Because it turns out that we humans are the biggest wild card in this whole system.
See, for a long time, economic models were built on this core assumption that people are perfectly rational, that we're like calculators, always making logical decisions to get the most benefit. Then a new field called behavioral economics came along and basically pointed out the obvious. That is just not true. We're emotional, we're biased, and we are often predictably irrational. We are the glitch in the machine.
And these glitches have names. There's loss aversion. You know that feeling, right? The pain of losing $20 is way more powerful than the joy of finding $20. Then there's the sunk cost fallacy. That's when you force yourself to finish a terrible movie just because you paid for the ticket, even though you'll never get that time back. And of course, there's hurting. You see everyone else panic buying toilet paper, so you do it too, even if you don't really know why. Understanding these biases is absolutely key to understanding how economies really work.
So, given all this complexity, from global trade to our own weird grains, how do we organize ourselves? Well, the two big ideas you always hear about are capitalism and socialism. Capitalism, which is based on private ownership, is an incredible engine for innovation, but it can also lead to massive inequality. Socialism, based on collective ownership, aims for much greater equality, but it can sometimes struggle with motivating people to produce and innovate. The reality, of course, is that pretty much every country on Earth is a mixed economy, blending elements from both.
But ultimately, it doesn't matter what you call the system, capitalism, socialism, or something else entirely. Every single one is just an attempt to answer these three fundamental questions. What goods and services are we going to produce? How are we going to produce them? And once they're made, who gets to have them? Just about every political and economic debate you can think of is, at its core, a fight over the answers to these three questions.
And that brings us to the end. After thousands of years of wrestling with this basic problem of scarcity, what's the final verdict? Well, the honest answer is that no one has found the perfect solution. Every system has trade-offs. Every single choice has an opportunity cost. And the project of building a better, fairer economy is a story that's still being written. The challenge of balancing freedom and efficiency and equality, well, that remains the central task of our time.